Johna Christensen is my older sister, but she's 16 years older than I am. And unfortunately, she passed away about 10 years ago, and she had written her memoir of her time when the Nazis occupied Copenhagen, Denmark in 1943 to kind of 1945, the end of the war. In the early parts of World War II, Denmark was a protectorate country from Nazi Germany, meaning they really just wanted their supplies, and they kind of left them alone, let their government kind of run things. But in 1943, the word started going out that Nazi Germany wasn't quite as friendly. Now, you can remember that the complications here on this story is Jonna and my mother, our father. My mother was Orthodox Jew and her family. My dad was pretty much an atheist, and he was Viking, Danish. So there's the Danish side, the Jewish side, and she lived between two worlds. My grandmother, my father's mother, owned a tavern and brothel in Copenhagen, and she was making a lot of money off Nazis, off the Germans who were coming in there. They were spending a lot of money on food and booze, and it actually was pretty good for the economy there initially. And so people didn't really believe a lot of the early reports, and I think a lot of the world didn't understand how bad Nazi Germany was acting. And in 1943, they were starting to see some resistance, and so Jonna's life was pretty much kind of normal, and he was pretty happy in little Denmark. And all of a sudden, Nazi Germany started cracking down. Tanks started coming in, planes started coming in, and they took over. They disbanded the police force, they closed down Jewish operations or stores, and things were being pretty bad here and restrictive. And my dad even had some Nazi friends in the tavern here, which actually helped him work in the Danish resistance later, because there was a lot of bribery and other things going on, because Germany had been there for several years, and they kind of got some Danish friends, and they were kind of sympathetic to the cause. So that's kind of what was going on in Denmark at that time. And one thing that's unique about Denmark during this whole time is that I don't think people realize that Denmark saved over 99% of the Jews. There were kind of solidarity in this. They said, if you're a Jew, we're Danes. Doesn't matter if you're a gypsy, a Jew, an atheist, a Protestant, a Catholic, doesn't matter. We're all Danes. We're all together here. We're all integrated into the society, and they all helped each other. And they pulled together to save all the Jews in that country, because they thought what Nazi Germany was doing was unfair. Jonna, my sister, so she's only 6, 7 years old. The other thing about Jonna you need to know is, first of all, she's half Jewish, half Danish. She was also born with a birth defect. Her left arm came down to a little stub with 5 little nubs on it. She had glasses. She didn't see very well. She had little black curly hair, so she didn't look like a proud Viking. And she was made fun of a lot. Her best friend, Hannah Hansen, was this blonde, blue-eyed little girl. And as it started going that Jews are bad, or they're not sure, and the Nazis were going to come after them, all of a sudden her mother wouldn't let her play with her best friend, Jonna. So Hannah and Jonna couldn't play together, and she was confused. Well, why is that? What, she was just very confused about all this stuff. I was counting as I read the book again, she had like 16 secrets she had to keep. Things from my father was trying to make my mother be Danish, and he would make her cook pork, which is against Jewish law, of course, and she had to keep the secret that she cannot tell the Jewish part of the family about that. She found, my dad would go away to secret meetings, and she saw a gun in his pant pocket, and that's a secret she had to keep. My dad apparently was having an affair. She was very hurt and very confused. She had all these secrets to keep, and she had 2 different lives to worry about. She had the fun Danish side and the little more conservative Jewish side. And her reaction was of massive confusion. Her whole world was upside down. She didn't know why all of a sudden being Jewish was bad. She didn't understand that. And actually my father told her, from now on, you're not Jewish. Don't tell anybody. And she was like confused. Well, why is that a problem? What's wrong with Nazis? My father had some sympathetic Nazis that helped them, and why are some good and some bad? She was totally confused. What was really interesting is this memoir is written from her perspective in the first person. And you could see her confusion about all this, about everything being upset, all these secrets she had to keep, didn't know what was going on. And there were some very bad things on how they had to take away my mother because she was pregnant during this time and she couldn't have a baby during this time. So she had to have an abortion. And she was very upset as why she took them away. She didn't understand why she was being taken away. You know, this whole thing about why is it called the red umbrella? Jonna always wanted the red umbrella. Little girls want special things, and Hannah Hansen had a red umbrella. She always wanted it. My father thought it was ridiculous, you know. Or black, purple, green, doesn't matter. You got a black umbrella, you can use that. But she wanted the red umbrella. And it was always, she always wanted it. It was just one of the things she wanted to have. And as they're going to escape, what happened here is really amazing. So the word went out in one night in all the synagogues and all the churches that the Nazis were coming the next day to gather all the Jews. In one night, the word went out, and all the Jews went to hiding with friends, family, out on farms, everywhere. And from that, over the next 2 weeks, they went out to farms, other places, and snuck out to get into small boats and get across the Öresund Sound over to neutral Sweden to be saved. So as they were escaping into these areas over by the coast, the Nazis kind of knew some of this was going on, and they had checkpoints all over the place. So they were going in an ambulance. And they were trying to sneak through with an ambulance, think they could get through, but they stopped at a Nazi checkpoint. And Jonna is very young and full of questions, talking all the time. And my parents needed her to be totally quiet. And they're in the background with a lot of people behind in this ambulance. And my dad took a pillow down and he said, I'm going to shove your face into this pillow. I don't want you to say one word. And he told my mom that if there's shooting, I don't want her to see us getting killed. And he said, you just be quiet, hold your breath, and don't come up until I say anything. She goes, I don't think I can do it. And he says, if you do this, I'll buy you a red umbrella. She did it. There was one shot, but they made it through. There was a little bribery going on. They got to the shore, they got in the boat, and they escaped over to neutral Sweden. They were processed there, which is a whole traumatic experience because now Sweden didn't know who they were getting and they were trying to process them. So here they are. They paid off people. They've used all their money. Money was hidden in doorways, sewn into her coat. She lost a lot of the stuff. They lost everything going across here. Everyone had to pay off people in boats and ships to get across. So here they are in Sweden. They're finally processed and walking in Sweden. One of the nurses was taking them in temporarily. And they go by a little store. And my sister sees a red umbrella. And my dad reaches in his pocket, has just a few coins. That's all I have. And he goes inside. And he comes back out and says, close your eyes. And he brings out a red umbrella. I was born in 1953. My parents came over to America in 1948. So there was 16 years. My parents didn't think they could have a baby again. The doctor told her she wouldn't after this traumatic experience in Copenhagen when she went to the hospital. So I was born in America, in Seattle area in 1953. And then I had another little sister, 4 years younger than me. When my parents came over after the war, immigrants didn't talk about anything. They didn't speak Danish. You're in America now, we're going to speak English. That's what my father said. And the only time I heard them speak Danish is when they were fighting a fight. They didn't want me to understand, but I knew a few things. They never talked about the war, so I never learned anything about it. One day, so I'm an architect, graphic designer, I like those kinds of things. I saw the symbol of the swastika. I thought it was a really interesting kind of opposite shaped symbol. And I brought it home on a piece of paper. And my mother saw that and went nuclear. I mean, she ripped it up, shredded it, put it in the trash. I mean, just went crazy. And I had no idea what was going on. I didn't know anything about the war, really. I'm 11 years old. And that's when I started learning a little bit about what was going on during Nazi Germany during this time, and how I didn't have any idea how it affected my mom or her family. And so what happened after this is when my parents died and I went to go live with Jonna, she was telling me the story because she had memories of this time. And when she told me the story, basically of the red umbrella, I thought it was an amazing time and story. And I actually wrote it down. I'm in 7th grade now, and I wrote the story. It's like 5 or 6 pages, and I submitted it to the school. And I called it the red umbrella because there seemed like there's this thread from beginning to end about this thing. And I got an A on the paper. And I told my sister, Jonna, I said, you really should write more of this down someday. And so this is, early, mid-60s, and she's gone through multiple husbands, 6 husbands since that time. And when she finally got rid of the last one, so she's like 60 years old, she finally says, I'm going to do this. And she started writing it down. And when she first started it, she got some help from a local high school teacher, English teacher, but it ended up being kind of a historical novel or a historical nonfiction novel, and it was almost read like a textbook. It wasn't very exciting. Nobody liked it. And she was in a group called the Would-Be Writers Group, and they helped her say that you should write this with your own voice. It'd be a better story. And she did that. And that's kind of when I came into the picture. How this came to be published is that when we got rejections from normal publishers because she was unpublished, the self-publishing industry was starting to come around at this time. And so I contacted, there's several national self-publishing companies, and they are relentless marketers. And once I'm online with them, they were calling me all the time, and it became very complicated about, they really just wanted to publish it. They didn't care what condition it was in, they just wanted to publish it, get your money, and go. And at this time, Chuck Robinson, who's the president or the owns Village Books here in Bellingham, installed one of the first self-publishing machines here. It's called an espresso machine. And they would actually do small versions of, just a very limited run here of books right in the store. I thought, this is really great. They had a little system here where you could work with somebody locally for the graphics, for editing, for getting all the ISBN numbers, all Library of Congress numbers. And it was nice to work with somebody locally to kind of ask questions and go back and forth. So it was extremely valuable to have independent bookstores help with that self-publishing aspect. And without that, I don't know that it would have taken a lot longer to do, but that's what really made it happen. And then once that happened, and it starts picking up steam here, and it's a little more publishing need to happen, so I have to go to a bigger source for publishing now, as a little more people are wanting this thing. It's starting to branch out here as people hear about it, friends and family, and it's like the social networking thing. It just starts branching off. And I'm going to be sending this now to, there's Holocaust museums and Danish museums and different associations who are interested in this story. It is kind of an interesting story. But it's really intended for friends and family and the process that I learned about my family. And I think it's something that's really important for more people to do. Everyone's got a story, and I think it's really important to dig into that. The value in learning the story of your family is something that people should learn from this, that there are a lot of things that tell you about who you are. Now, if your story has murder and sabotage and family conflict and religious conflict and Nazis, I mean, all the better. It's more interesting, but it's, I think that's the value here that you come away with. And it's a touching story. Even though there's a lot of mayhem going on here, it ends in a happy note.